Welcome to Media Thread, the series where I cover my favorite media texts of the year and rank them as they appear. Today I'm covering My Hero Academia Season 7, which is the first TV show on the list, but not the first anime, as I did cover the Haikyuu movie. Ever since I started the anime in 2018, I've loved My Hero Academia, so much so that I actually read the manga in the middle of Season 3. I continued reading it and was enamored with the chapters that Season 6 would eventually adapt, as I loved the opportunities that came from destroying the familiar hero society. I was thus disappointed that the chapters following Season 6 rushed towards the final battle instead of exploring the broken hero society more, and there were other aspects of the final battle I didn't like, such as Bakugo dying and immediately getting revived by Edgeshot of all characters. I stopped reading the manga at chapter 366, just when Deku showed up to fight Shigaraki. I just wasn't that invested anymore, and it didn't help that Mirio resorted to twerking in order to distract Shigaraki. Now having watched the anime season that adapts those chapters and beyond, I still have some of the same issues, but I'm not as bothered about them as I used to be, and I really enjoyed Season 7 for the most part, enough to make the media thread. I really can't agree with those who think this is the best My Hero season, however, as Season 6 exists, where just about every episode was great. There are several great episodes in Season 7 as well, but there are some that don't hit as hard as they should have. This season contains 21 episodes instead of 25, which was actually a blessing in disguise, since that meant Studio Bones could lessen their workload and thus spend more time animating. We've seen in prior seasons that they haven't adapted the manga all that well, often resorting to one-to-one recreations of panels without adding much animation, and since Horikoshi draws such detailed panels, the still frames in the anime also pale in comparison. Season 7 meanwhile looks considerably better than Seasons 4 to 6, looking more akin to the first 3 seasons. This quality is mostly consistent too, and dips as often as it peaks. Perhaps the worst visuals of the season are Shigaraki's CG hands, but their uncanniness does kinda work for the horrific energy they're supposed to emanate. I'm pretty sure Season 7 would have looked even better had the new movie not taken priority, and I'm hoping the animators will prioritize the shorter final season so that it can look more akin to Studio Bones' other animated masterpieces. We need more Yutaka Nakamura influence. Everything he touches turns to gold. The new standard of quality art and animation already gets showcased in the first 2 episodes, adapting the fight between Star and Stripe and Shigol for one really well. The second episode looks particularly good, with consistently detailed art and fluid animation. The fight itself is awesome, Star and Stripe's New Order quirk allowing for some pretty insane moves, such as touching lasers and making a giant air clone of herself. It gives off big Merc energy, especially with the patriotic background music and the fact that the Americans sent nukes to Japan. For as fun as this battle is, I do still think Star and Stripe is a wasted character, as she comes out of nowhere just to die after a couple episodes. She only serves as a plot device to nerf Shigol for one and give the heroes more time to prepare for the final battle. I do appreciate the added time, but it's still cheap. The UA traitor finally gets revealed in the following episode, and I like that the story initially makes you believe it's Invisible Girl, only for her to find out it's Aoyama. There's been a lot of subtle foreshadowing throughout the show that Aoyama is in fact the traitor, which gets paid off nicely here, but I do think that it didn't hit as hard as it should have, given that it's been so long since Aoyama has had any focus. Like, the last time he was prominent was all the way back in Season 4, and I get that his recent absence plays into his characterization, but that fact could have been emphasized beforehand. I like that the rest of Class A forgives Aoyama, and also that Aizawa is a bit more hard on him, but still decides not to expel him. We quickly move towards the final battle, in which Aoyama, his parents, Shinso, and Monoma are key players to realize the hero's battle strategies. I love how giddy Monoma is to play the main character, and it's great to see side characters get their time in the limelight, which this season excels at. Toga effortlessly sending Deku to her own battlefield was very contrived, and it's funny how that move completely derailed the hero's plans. I wasn't a big fan of the Deku, Toga, and Duraraka stuff either, but I will say that it pays off amazingly towards the end of the season, which I'll get to later. Episode 8 covering Shoto and Dabi's fight was easily the best episode up until this point, paying off Shoto's great development and peeling off another layer of Dabi's tragic backstory. A very emotional fight, though it did feel a bit cheap that Dabi continued to survive after it, especially since a good portion of the next episode was spent on other characters reacting to Shoto's success, which felt like a waste of time. It's weird for Jiro and Tokoyami to battle All for One too. They were lucky to survive that, but they did have help from the top 2 heroes, to be fair. It's always a highlight to see Endeavor and Hawks team up, even if this instance isn't anywhere near as good as their first fight back in the Season 4 finale, which is still My Hero's best episode. Endeavor fighting All for One is still pretty kick-ass though, losing an arm to protect others and replacing it with a literal firearm to continue punching All for One. Endeavor's even got laser eyes, it's insane. His ever-growing character continues to develop in this fight, and he actually manages to destroy All for One. Too bad All for One is a cheater, using Eri's quirk to rewind his body, which is pretty wild. I like the handicap that All for One's body continues to rewind until he ceases to exist, and it's interesting to see a younger version of him. Him sharing Levi's voice actor is so cool, he does a great job portraying All for One's edgy face. Episode 11 is also beautiful, featuring some of the best visuals of the season, giving the big 3 of UA their time to shine, including Sun Eater's insane Hydra combo, and giving Bakugo a terrific last stand. Then the next episode undermines that by bringing him back. Okay, he's not back yet, but he will be, and if he won't, then what was the point? Also, why is it Edgeshot who's saving him when he and Bakugo have never interacted before? Surely Edgeshot has experienced other deaths before this where sacrificing himself to revive them would be a viable option. Couldn't it have been Best Jeanist instead? He's way more connected to Bakugo than Edgeshot ever was. Then again, Best Jeanist already kind of died, so I guess that also would have been stupid. Maybe Bakugo shouldn't have died at all then, or maybe he should have just stayed dead. Bringing characters back from the dead is not an uncommon trope in shonen, but that doesn't make it less bad, and this revival is written so poorly. Yet another egregious example of My Hero's unwillingness to kill off characters, and it won't be the last. The end of episode 12 is where I stopped reading the manga, but I actually found Mirio twerking a bit funny this time around, and I was pretty hyped for Deku vs Shigall for one, so I couldn't possibly stop after that cliffhanger. Besides, I generally enjoy the anime more than the manga, even though the manga is the definitive version of My Hero. Deku's final quirk, Gear Shift, makes the fight really cool, being able to shift the speed at which things accelerate through space, including himself. It was a bit jarring to suddenly move over to the heteromorph situation at the hospital in the next episode, but I ended up enjoying that plotline more than I expected to. I've always wanted Shoji to have more screen time, so it was really nice to get his backstory, which hit me quite a bit, and I like how he managed to convince the vengeful heteromorphs to stand down. Even Koda got some good characterization, and he's been one of the least utilized characters of Class A. I'm still waiting for Sato to get anything at all. Spinner might have also been a bit underutilized as usual, but he did get the job done, waking Kurogiri up so that he could help the villains. It was pretty insane to see Dabi and Toga as Twice get teleported to the battlefield where Endeavor and Hawks are, and for other Twice clones to swarm Aizawa, Monoma and Emmanuel, removing their quirk erasure of Shigall for one. I must say that episode 15, and 18 for that matter, were structured weirdly, jumping between time so much and making things a little difficult to follow. Otherwise, I'm impressed by how easy it is to follow the action considering there are so many battlefields. This war does run into the problem of interrupting fights, often just before getting interesting too, which can feel anticlimactic, but I have to commend Horikoshi for mostly doing a good job of balancing them. Episode 16 is another banger, where La Brava and Gentle finally make their return, and my god is it satisfying. Gentle in particular is one of my favorite My Hero characters, so seeing his scenes be adapted with such care brought tears to my eyes, especially since he got a rendition of the fantastic Might plus U theme. Whereas before his heroic attempt of trying to save someone from falling led to his own downfall, this time he manages to keep the coffin in the sky from falling, along with all the people within it. He's finally become the hero he always wanted to be, which plays into the beautiful message that villains can change their ways for the better. This message is also furthered by La Brava, of course, who hacks the villain Skeptic in such a funny way, and Lady Nagant also becomes a hero again by stopping Shigaraki from using his decay quirk. That's right, Lady Nagant is still alive somehow, even though she literally exploded, so while I like what they're going for, her survival doesn't make any sense. I've kind of come to terms with My Hero being like this though, so it's not a huge deal. The next episode has Tokoyami and Dark Shadow popping off against All for One, and it was nice seeing the Shiketsu students again. Tokoyami's face after seeing Kami's seductive illusion of Hawks was gold, and although Kami calling Hawks a risk cake in the dub is cringeworthy, it's also pretty funny since it fits her character. Seeing young All for One swiftly deal with these pests in the next episode was cool. It was shocking to see him steal Hawk's incredible quirk Fear Swings, which basically amounts to a character death, but it was stupid for All for One to change his mind about stealing Tokoyami's Dark Shadow. Tokoyami losing that part of him would have given the story more meaningful consequences, and All for One using that quirk in his upcoming battle against All Might could have led to some juicy drama. That battle is teased in episode 19, which might be the best episode of the whole season. It's so epic to see All Might stand in the way of All for One while saying, "I am here!" The best aspect of the episode, however, is everything revolving around the Todoroki family, which remains the most consistently well-written storyline of My Hero, and this episode is a fantastic resolution to it. The fight between Endeavor and Dabi is heartbreaking, especially when Dabi unlocks Rei's Ice Quirk, meaning he could have been a good candidate to become the greatest hero after all. It gets even more emotional as Rei, Fuyumi, and Natsuo enter the fray, preventing Endeavor from sacrificing himself along with Dabi. Meanwhile, Shoto and Ida race on a fighter jet made out of ice, which is hella sick, and Shoto makes it just in time to save the day. I like that Stain calls Ida a true hero, and that Ida tells Shoto that he helped him become the hero he wanted to be. This episode has so many beautiful callbacks and payoffs, and it's adapted incredibly well, with stunning art and animation, not to mention some moving background music. The ending where Endeavor apologizes to every family member is so emotional too. After such a tremendous episode, I thought the next one would be a bit of a letdown, especially considering I didn't care that much about the storyline between Uraraka and Toga. To my surprise, Season 7, Episode 20, A Girl's Ego, ended up becoming my favorite episode of the season, perhaps even of the year. Ochako Uraraka vs Himiko Toga is such an incredible OST. I honestly think it has become my favorite of the entire series. It's unbelievably powerful, and it perfectly complements the beautiful scene it accompanies. The voice acting of Uraraka and Toga are also on a whole other level. The emotion they bring in this episode easily brings me to tears. Uraraka acts like a true hero as she tries to understand Toga and connect with her, spilling her guts and allowing Toga to do the same. Uraraka manages to get through to Toga in the end, and it's bittersweet to hear Toga vent out her frustrations. Uraraka embracing her and calling her the cutest in the world is so wholesome. I'm so impressed that this one episode managed to make me retroactively love the storyline between Uraraka and Toga. It was nice to get another fantastic Uraraka moment. There aren't enough of those to go around. I was hoping to enjoy the season finale even more, and while it was great, it definitely didn't hit as hard. The aftermath of Uraraka and Toga's fight was very moving, Toga sacrificing herself to save Uraraka with a blood transfusion, and realizing that she could have had a good life had she wanted to give blood as much as she wanted to taste it. This scene might have gone on for uncomfortably long, but that allowed us to stay in that painful moment before giving us the hype All Might vs All for One confrontation. The armor All Might puts on is so badass, and it's a cool detail that it was designed by Melissa Shield from the first movie. There should have been hints leading up to this, but hey, watching All Might fight again is awesome. I love that he's got so many attack options, and that all of them are named after his students. He uses them quite strategically, which he has to, considering he doesn't have one for all and is fighting the deadly All for One. All Might laughing like a maniac as he successfully stalls All for One is great. It seems he's the ultimate troll now. The season unfortunately ends on a cliffhanger, which was to be expected, but it still hurts. I'm very hyped to see My Hero's conclusion. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how Season 7 of My Hero Academia turned out. After all, I expected to not like it much, due to how it rushes into the final battle when there are so many characters and plot threads that should have gotten more development beforehand. Fortunately, the final battle is so long and dense that it manages to pay off several elements, making up for some of the time that was lost. Of course, there are still quite a few aspects that don't receive attention, and I suppose that's more of a general problem with the story being overly ambitious. I'm otherwise impressed with what Season 7 does for the most part, even if not everything hits, and it's definitely better than Seasons 1 and 5. Season 6 is clearly still the best My Hero season, but Season 7 might come close to Seasons 2 to 4. I'll be a happy My Hero fan if the final season can stick the landing. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully you'll see me next time!